Sylvy, a daughter of freedom, a matriarch of memory. In the quiet red clay soil of Barber County, Alabama, in the month of May 1874, a child was born into a nation still struggling to understand the meaning of its own freedom. Her name was Sylvia Ferrier, though generations who came after her would know her with greater affection and reverence as Ma Silvy. She entered this world less than a decade after the cannons of the Civil War had fallen silent, and less than 10 years after the ancestors of her generation had walked from the shadow of slavery into the uncertain dawn of emancipation. Her father, Pompey Ferrier, born in 1829, had lived through the cruel institution of American slavery, witnessed the great national fracture of the Civil War, and survived the turbulent years of Reconstruction. Her mother, Martha Rogers Ferrier, born in 1822, had likewise carried within her memory the experiences of a people who endured bondage and then fought to build families, communities, and institutions under the difficult promises of freedom. They had already raised a large family by the time Sylvia was born. She arrived as one of their youngest children, a daughter born not in chains, but in the first generation of African Americans whose lives would be entirely shaped by the possibilities and limitations of freedom. Sylvia's childhood unfolded during the final years of Reconstruction and the rise of the Jim Crow era, when black families throughout the American South fought to preserve the gains of emancipation against the forces of segregation, violence, and economic hardship. In the small communities surrounding Mount Andrew in Election Precinct 3 of Barber County, the strength of family, land, church, and faith became the foundation upon which survival and dignity were built. At just 17 years old, on December 21, 1891, Sylvia Ferrier married Landers Hilliard, a young man born in 1871. Together they established a home and began a family at a time when American Africans throughout the South were creating their own schools, churches, businesses, and networks of mutual support despite the tightening grip of racial oppression. The Hilliard household would become a vessel through which generations would pass. Sylvia and Landers welcomed their children into a changing America. Alexander Hilliard, born in 1893, Johnny Lee Hilliard, born in 1899, Odessa Hilliard, born in 1901, who would one day live into the 21st century, an infant child born in 1906, whose brief life remained forever part of the family's story, Albertha Hilliard, born in 1908, and Bernard Hilliard, born in 1910. As Ma Silvy raised her children, she witnessed the turn of the 20th century. She saw the rise of the automobile, the spread of electricity and telephones, the migration of millions of African Americans seeking opportunity beyond the South, and the emergence of new voices in black culture and political thought. She lived through her son-in-law, David Dorsey's enlistment in the First World War, the Great Depression, her grandson Willie David Dorsey, enlistment in Second World War, and her grandson Bernard Dorsey's fight in Korea. She witnessed black soldiers leave home to fight for democracy abroad, while their families continued the struggle for equality at home. Throughout these decades, Ma Silvy remained rooted in Barber County. The records of 1900 and 1920 place her family in the Mount Andrew community, where she worked as a cook, and where generations of Hilliards and their kin maintained the traditions of rural Alabama, traditions built upon labor, faith, resilience, and an unshakable commitment to family. Her mother, Martha Rogers Ferrier, lived to the remarkable age of 100 years, passing away in 1922. In Martha's lifetime, she had journeyed from an America where she was born, enslaved, to an America where her grandchildren and great-grandchildren were creating new futures. That extraordinary bridge of memory and history was passed to Ma Silvy, and then onward to those who followed. When Sylvia Ma Silvy Hilliard passed away in 1956, she left this world during the opening chapter of the modern civil rights movement. Her life had stretched from the aftermath of slavery to the eve of the Montgomery bus boycott and the great social transformations that would soon reshape the nation. The world she departed was profoundly different from the one she entered, and her very existence represented a living testimony to the journey of African Americans from bondage, through Reconstruction, through Jim Crow, and toward the continuing struggle for justice and equality. Her earthly body was laid to rest in the sacred ground of Center Ridge Missionary Baptist Church Cemetery in Barber County, Alabama. Yet Ma Silvy's greatest monument was never carved in stone. It lived in her children, her grandchildren, and the countless descendants who carry forward her blood, her endurance, her prayers, and her legacy. On this Juneteenth celebration of 2026, as the Dorsey family gathers in remembrance and reunion, we honor not merely a name recorded on a page, but a woman who stood as a bridge between worlds. Ma Silvy was born in the first breath of freedom and became a guardian of the generations that followed. The story of Sylvia Ma Silvy Hilliard is the story of so many African American women whose hands may never have signed famous documents or appeared in history books, yet whose labor built families, communities, churches, and futures. They were the quiet architects of survival. They were the keepers of memory. And because Ma Silvy lived, we are here,